Everything in this book is based on real events and real characters, using real place names and real events as the first person to explain the ghosts, demons, and people hidden in dark corners. This book will reveal all hidden sects and aristocratic families for you, and open the door to another world. Do you really believe that everyone around you is human? Still a monster dressed in human skin, beware of those around you, because someone is more terrifying than a devil. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Into the world. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In a small courtyard with blue bricks and yellow tiles, a middle-aged man with sword eyebrows and starry eyes, a face as sharp as a knife, was very brave. He paced back and forth in the courtyard with impatience, occasionally looking towards the position of the left side room. But in front of the stone table in front of him sat an elderly man who was calm as water. The old man had a beautiful face, white hair and a childlike appearance, full of vitality, and was very robust. The muscle lines on his body were clearly visible, indicating that the old man was also a prominent figure in his youth. At this moment, the old man couldn't help but smile as he looked at the middle-aged man in front of him, restless. "You're such a big person now, and you're so restless. I didn't think I was like this when your mother gave birth to you back then. Instead, I calmly warmed up a pot of yellow wine and a few small dishes, sat in this courtyard and chatted with your Uncle Lou, chatting and laughing happily." The middle-aged man looked at him and said, "It seems like you haven't told me anything about your mother." The old man shook his head and took a sip of wine without saying anything. "Don't worry, there won't be anything wrong. Giving birth is something that every woman has to go through. It's no use rushing like this. Sit down and have a drink with me." The middle-aged man said helplessly, "Father, how could I have the heart to drink? Xiner is in such pain inside. Your grandson has not yet appeared, so where can I have the heart to accompany you?" "Ah!" Sobbing. Suddenly, a baby's cry came from the wing room, and upon hearing it, he felt a strong sense of vitality, roaring like a heavenly drum. His cry woke up the once peaceful village. At this time, it is already Inshe. As the loud cry sounded, the roosters in the chicken coop were startled and began to crow incessantly. The domestic dog also began to bark, and even the magpies in the forest announced their joy, as if celebrating the birth of this baby. Suddenly, auspicious clouds rose from the east in the sky, and a purple aura came from the east. There seemed to be immortal music echoing from the void, making people intoxicated. Later, the flowers and plants in the courtyard grew rapidly at a visible speed to the naked eye, and golden lights descended from the sky, enveloping the side room. However, the room automatically rose like an invisible wall, blocking all the golden light from outside. And there are magpies carrying azaleas circling happily in mid-air. Even though the father and son, who are accustomed to seeing big scenes, were both startled. The middle-aged man asked the old man, "Dad, what's the situation?" The old man also came back to his senses from shock and said in a daze, "When he was born, there was a heaven and earth illusion, blessed by heaven. It is said that only saints have had such an illusion. Son, who is this newly born grandson? He has even stirred up the protective formation of our Zhuge family." The old man pondered slightly, "What I have done in these years has been against the heavens, and it may not be a good thing for my grandson to be blessed by heaven." Then he walked into the room and pulled out a large cauldron that was over 1 person tall. The bronze cauldron is carved with flowers, birds, fish, and insects, deities preaching, and scenes of ancient ancestors worshipping. The large cauldron exudes an ancient and rustic atmosphere, as if flowing through the river of history for 5,000 years. The old man pointed to the cauldron and said, "God blesses but does not take it. In order to avoid being hated by heaven, we will often use this cauldron to bathe him in the future, which can protect him from being shrouded in fate." Every household in the village was also awakened by the crying of the baby and the noise of the animals. Then, every household turned on their lights one after another, and they were frightened to death by this scene. Chapter 2. Guarding the Way and One Book. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. But upon learning that it was the grandson of the old man who was born, everyone came to congratulate him. Although it was already late at night, all the villagers had no intention of sleeping. Instead, they walked into the courtyard one by one, almost leveling the threshold. The old man's name is Jiang Shoudao, and he is a famous feng shui master from 8 nearby villages. He is willing to come to anyone who has some happy events, such as moving graves, repairing houses, and adding zong. He also uses his first-hand local medical skills to treat countless villagers nearby. Moreover, because anyone in need is willing to lend a lot of money, he is willing to lend a helping hand, making him a famous kind-hearted person from 8 nearby villages. And today is the day his daughter-in-law gave birth. Originally, the villagers planned to sing a play to celebrate for them, but for some reason, Jiang Shoudao was unwilling. Instead, he asked everyone to go to bed early tonight and not walk around outside. It's not too late for you to come and congratulate them when the child is born. Although everyone was puzzled by his words, they also remembered them in their hearts. After all, who hasn't received the favor of the Jiang family in these years? Jiang Shoudao's son is named Jiang Yishu. When I was 19 years old, I went out to work hard. I heard that I was already the CEO of several companies outside. If anyone in the village has no way out after graduating from university or reaching the age of employment, they should go to Guangdong to find Uncle Jiang. Over the years, although Jiang Yishu has made a fortune, he has not forgotten the villagers, who have built bridges and paved roads in the village. Every year, he also spends a little money to provide clothes and blankets for the elderly in the village, repair houses, and so on. But for some reason, although he married, he hasn't been able to conceive children for years. Jiang Shoudao told him that if you make a fortune, you will inevitably be envied by some people, and your business opponents will also hold grudges against you, so some resentment has arisen. These grievances are not harmful to you, but they have been bitter. Although she has enjoyed material blessings with you, the resentment has entangled with her, causing her to be unable to conceive for a long time. Upon hearing this, Jiang Yishu locked himself in his study for 2 days and 2 nights. During this time, there was no oil or rice in, which frightened his first wife Chen Xian into calling Lao Shoudao one after another. However, Lao Shoudao made her not worry, as he should be weighing something. Sure enough, shortly after Lao Shoudao finished speaking, Jiang Yishu walked out of the study and said to Chen Xian, "If I had nothing left, would you still be willing to follow me?" Upon hearing this, Chen Xian gently hugged him and said, "When I was with you back then, you weren't completely penniless, just a poor kid." "Okay, I see. Let's go back to our hometown, back to the small village, and live a quiet life. I will ask Zhuge to help me sell the company tomorrow," said Jiang Yishu. The next day, unbelievable news spread from the industry that Jiang Yishu, one of the top 10 outstanding young entrepreneurs in the city, had announced that he would sell all his personal businesses. Everyone thought he was going to spend money and live abroad, but to their surprise, he announced that all his assets would be donated to all the Hope Elementary School projects. After completing all the procedures, they embarked on a journey back to their hometown. Although Lao Shoudao was an old feng shui master, Jiang Yishu did not inherit his legacy. Instead, he did not like these feudal superstitions. After returning to the countryside, he opened a small clinic with the knowledge of local medicine learned from Lao Shoudao and attending medical school in university. Chapter 3. Disaster or Fortune. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. He also rarely collects money from the villagers. On the contrary, when families in need come, he will pay out of his own pocket to give them some money as a subsidy. The generations of Lao Shoudao and Jiang Yishu have won an excellent reputation in several small villages nearby. So much so that the old village head in the village has repeatedly consulted with Jiang Yishu to appoint him as the village head. After all, he is the first college student in the village and has done so much for his hometown. But every time he was pushed off by Jiang Yishu due to his lack of ability. Jiang Yishu and Chen Xian became an extramarital couple, but over the years they have been suffering from a common ailment. They have never had children. They have also gone to the hospital for a check-up, and both sides have no physical problems. However, Lao Shoudao said that this matter is urgent and everything is fate. But Jiang Yishu had already reached his 30s, and among his peers in the village in this grade, they had already formed a group of descendants. It wasn't until the age of 32 that Chen Xian finally became pregnant, which made Jiang Yishu extremely happy. When he told the old man this news, he was so happy that he almost couldn't breathe. After learning about it, the villagers also congratulated one after another. Until tonight, the baby in my belly finally came out, and many people were eagerly anticipating it with a happy and joyful mood. At this moment, Lao Shoudao welcomed every friend who came to congratulate him with a smile, but Jiang Yishu's mind was no longer here. He was full of his first wife and children in the room. Give birth, it's a chubby white little boy. Mother and son are safe and lovely, the midwife said loudly as the door was opened with a bang. Jiang Laodao, congratulations. Finally, I can have a grandson, ha ha ha. Brother Ishu, congratulations. Mother and son are safe. You can have a good meal next. The congratulatory voice grew louder. Huh, definitely. Let's have a grand banquet for 3 days and 3 nights. I'll go and invite the troupe to come over right away. After Jiang Yishu finished speaking, he strode into the room. Looking at his lover lying in bed and the baby by his pillow, Jiang Yishu felt a pain in his heart. He grabbed Chen Xian's hand and said to her, Xian, you have suffered. Chen Xian smiled and said, what kind of hardship is this? Seeing this child, everything is worth it. Be good to us both in the future. I will. Jiang Yishu tightly grasped Chen Xian's hand. But at this moment, Jiang Shoudao outside the house was trembling all over, looking up at the sky in disbelief, as if something incredible had happened. Later, Jiang Shoudao loudly said to the crowd, big guy, quiet down. It's late at night now, and the little girl has just given birth and needs to rest. Please go back and rest first. As for how to celebrate in the future, I will ask Ishu to plan and then invite big guy. Now, please go home first. Isn't it, Mr. Jiang? So disappointing. We haven't seen the 3rd generation of the Jiang family yet. At least let's take a look and then drive us away. Yeah, yes, it woke us up in the middle of the night, so let's go back like this, can't it, ha ha ha. Although everyone was smiling and cursing, they still walked towards the door one by one. After seeing off the crowd, Jiang Shoudao hurriedly walked into the room. After giving Chen Xian some cold and warm greetings, he picked up the child and said, are you a lucky star or a demon star? Your birth has brought it too. Do you believe in fate? You are listening at novelfull.audio. 30 years ago in World War I, almost all the masters in the world appeared, and it was only then that they were able to seal it. I didn't expect it to break through the world so quickly and enter again. Father, what are you talking about? Jiang Yishu asked. It's nothing, you should leave here immediately with Xian and the child. Hurry up, it won't be too late. Father, what are you talking about? Xian has just given birth and cannot walk around casually, let alone wander around. Hurry up, if you don't leave, there won't be enough time. At this moment, in the forest outside the village, under a big tree stood a young man in a white suit, who was quite handsome. He took a pot of wine and took a sip in his mouth before speaking faintly, the wine in the mortal world is really good. It's been 30 years since I've tasted such a beautiful thing. Jiang Laodao, I didn't expect that you even have a grandson. It's really a house full of children and grandchildren. For ordinary people, your life has already been completed, and it's considered the end of the world. Unfortunately, such a beautiful thing is not something fate likes to see. It's too late to leave now. After finishing his last sip of wine, the young man casually threw the wine jug on the ground and walked towards the back mountain of the village. No, it's too late. It wants to unlock the seal of the demon on the back mountain. You should go to the East Wing room and pick up the guy. Follow me, Chen Xan. No matter what happens, don't leave this room. The old guard ordered. Lao Shoudao has always been very eloquent, and no one dares to go against his words. Therefore, when Jiang Yishu heard him say these things, he didn't hesitate. He ran to the room in the east and took out the guy who Jiang Shoudao was doing, and followed him up the mountain. On the way, Jiang Shoudao also took the initiative to speak up and said, "Child, it's time for you to know some things. What kind of person do you think being a father is? Greed for life and fear of death, insatiable greed, cunning, relying on old age to sell old age," said Jiang Yishu subconsciously. Then, realizing in shock that he had said the wrong thing, he quickly changed his mind and said, "You are like a towering mountain in my heart. You are old and strong, and selfless dedication is truly a model for being a father and the best choice for being a friend." "Alright, stop farting." Jiang Shoudao interrupted him and continued, "I used to be a great hero in other people's mouths, a respected object, and even known as the #1 leader in the South by people in the industry. What I did when I was young couldn't be written into an autobiography, so I named you a book, but you don't need to know about it. The only thing you need to know is that 30.5 years ago, fate came by the hand of others, and released a huge villain that was sealed by Zhuge Wulong in the Three Kingdoms period and was enough to subvert the world order. But there were many talented people in the world, and many experts came out. I used one thing to gather my luck, as well as a group of experts led by the leader of Dragon and Tiger Mountain, the leader of Mao Mountain, the leader of Qingqing Mountain, and the reclusive experts from all over the world. The battle was dark and the sun and the moon were dark. I didn't know how many experts died. Even several leaders were seriously injured and nearly died. Finally, the demon was sealed. I knocked fate out of the chess piece's body and, at the cost of my own strength, repaired the large hole that had broken through the walls of the mortal realm, which was the channel through which fate borrowed its path. In this way, the world was able to calm down for more than 30 years, and then I returned to the village to semi-recluse. Past events in the mortal world. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But in reality, it was guarding the seal on the back mountain, and I didn't expect it to come again at this moment. Don't let it break the seal of that thing. Otherwise, the leader of Dragon and Tiger Mountain is still young and weak, and the leader of Qingqing Mountain is old. The backbone of the sun was consumed again in the battle 30 years ago, and he can't fight again. Jiang Yishu listened in confusion. Although he knew that his father was a feng shui master, he did not expect his experience to be so bizarre and turbulent. Although he had experienced ups and downs in the business world over the years, learning these things still left him unable to digest for a while. He spoke up and said, "Father, I don't understand these things. You know, in my eyes, these things are feudal superstitions. Whatever you want to do, let me replace you. You're getting older, and when the sky falls, there's a tall one to support you, not to mention that you've lost your strength now. Alas, child, this is all fate and cannot be escaped. Your destiny is the fate of the Purple Way Emperor. If you were born into a commoner's family in ancient times, you would have been strangled to death, just afraid of being punished and even affecting the people of your tribe. Anyone with this destiny has a chance to fight for the throne." Chen Sheng, Wu Guang, and Zhang Jiao, who shouted that the heavens are dead and Huang Tian is standing, are all people with the Purple Way destiny. The seal of the giant villain must be offered by the person with this fate to implement the seal with the power of the crepe myrtle star. More than 30 years ago, Liang Zhiyu, the first disciple of Qingqing Mountain at that time and known as the first genius of the righteous way, sacrificed himself to become a seal. What I am saying to you today is to ask if you are willing to sacrifice yourself and strengthen the seal if necessary, said Jiang Shoudao. Will I die, father? Jiang Yishu asked in reverse. If you want me to die, then I still have a hint of reluctance. I haven't seen my child grow up yet, I haven't given my child a name, and I haven't even hugged him. Father, if it were you, would you be willing to give your life in this situation? Lao Shoudao replied, yes, my child. It's a bit too forced on you. Maybe there's another way, let's go first. No, father, I agree. Back then, people could sacrifice their lives for justice. I, Jiang Yishu, was also a strong and upright man. Moreover, if others knew that Jiang Shoudao's children were greedy for life and afraid of death, spreading it would not be a joke. For you, how can you tolerate those flowery words? For me, I can't tolerate them even more. During their conversation, they also walked into the valley behind the mountain, which is a famous dangerous area nearby. Its depth is bottomless, and some explorers tied more than 200 meters of rope to their bodies but did not reach the bottom. Strange noises were also heard from time to time, so it was already listed as a forbidden area by the locals. Moreover, decades ago, any family had dead babies or girls who gave birth to unwanted children, and those who could not enter their ancestral graves were all thrown into this mountain ditch, where countless bones were buried, often accompanied by ghostly fires. Jiang Laodao pointed to the pitch-black abyss below and said to Jiang Yishu, jump down. Jiang Yishu was stunned for a moment, thinking he had heard wrong, and looked at his father in confusion. Jiang Shoudao smiled and said, you thought I asked you to die, right? That's right, even if you knew you had to go, that's the duty of a cultivator. Chapter 6. The Past of Zhuge Kongming. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Speaking, Jiang Shoudao grabbed Jiang Yishu's hand and jumped off the cliff. Jiang Yishu closed his eyes tightly and thought he was dead, but the imagined heart-wrenching pain did not appear. In a daze, it seemed as if I had been kicked. Then I heard Jiang Shoudao's voice coming. Get up, don't pretend to be dead. A young man is even more frail than me. Jiang Yishu opened his eyes and looked around, only to find himself lying in a cave while Lao Shoudao was kicking him. He spoke up in frustration and said, Dad, how many people can match you? You have muscle lumps, and when you walk around the street, a bunch of talent scouts and agents come to sign you. They must have labeled you as a trendy old man. Dad, where are we? Jiang Shoudao ignored his previous words and said, this is the place where Zhuge Wulong sealed the giant beast. Just go inside. After speaking, he walked ahead on his own. Jiang Yishu followed behind him and looked around. It was obvious that this was a naturally formed cave that had been artificially modified by later generations. Although it was naturally formed, the axe marks and hammers created by humans were also very obvious, and there were murals carved around it. Although it has been 1,000 years, after the baptism of time, the life of Zhuge Liang can still be seen in the narrative. Father, can you tell me what this mural is meant to explain to future generations? There's nothing to say. The story of Zhuge Kongming, as you can see in the book, is similar to this path, but with some differences. That's why Zhuge Liang claims to be omniscient, as intelligent as a demon, and as strategic as a god. Legend has it that when he was 16 years old, just as he was about to fall asleep, a voice rang in his ear, asking him to walk out of his room and continue to the west until he reached the bottom of a big tree where he could stop. However, Mr. Kongming eventually grew up nearby, and the west side was a plain where the big tree came from. But as he walked, he realized that the area around him was very different from before. It used to be a small stream, but now the stream was gone. What caught his eye was a towering tree, as if it had appeared out of thin air. The sound told him that there was something under the root of the tree, and if you could obtain it, you could change the future trend of three-legged struggle and unify the world. When Kongming was young, he continued to dig under the roots of the tree with his hands following the sound of the finger. His 10 fingers were soaked in blood and he didn't want to stop because although he was young, there was a giant-like ambition hidden in his body. He wanted to change the situation in the world and make everyone live and work in peace. I don't know how long he had been digging, but his blood-stained hands seemed to have touched something hard. Then he worked even harder and finally pulled out a large box. With excitement, he opened the box and found rolls of bamboo slips and parchment books inside. Afterwards, he fainted and woke up again in the room, with no signs of injury on his 10 fingers. The box was quietly placed on the table, and Kongming looked at his hands and recalled everything from last night, as if everything was a dream. In fact, without this box, the young Kongming might have thought that everything from last night was really a dream. Later on, he looked at these bamboo slips like a precious treasure, which recorded how to govern the world, the supreme military strategy, and even the vague outline of the future historical trend. In the following years, he spent every day diligently studying these bamboo slips, forgetting to sleep or eat. He even had his meals taken into his room, and he didn't even want to see the women his family liked. For a whole 4 years, he hardly left home, and rarely walked out of the room, only holding a wool roll and pondering by the stream in the backyard. So much so that his friend Su Shu didn't want to invite him out for a trip. His friend Su Shu said, "Kongming, what you keep locked up in your room all day looking at is so delicate. I still remember that you are the most mischievous and playful among us." After speaking, Su Shu wanted to pick up a bamboo slip and take a look, but to his surprise, Zhuge Liang showed anger and drove him out of his room. Su Shu was surprised. Although Kongming was not a stingy person, why did he get angry at me for a few rotten bamboo slips? It was unreasonable, and then he shook his head and left. At the age of 19, Kongming had already left home to live in seclusion outside the city of Xiangyang. Sometimes he would test a character for the people inside the city, solve their doubts, and become the master of all knowledge in the mouths of the people of Xiangyang. However, although Kongming lived a semi-reclusive life, he felt unwilling because he had initially studied to save the people of the world from danger, but unfortunately he never met a wise master. Until one day, after Liu Bei arrived in Jingzhou, he was tricked by Kai Mao and encountered Mr. Shuijing on his way to escape. Mr. Shuijing learned from his mouth that there was a thatched cottage 20 miles outside Xianyang City, where a strange scholar named Zhuge Kongming lived. He heard that he had a talent of divination, almost like a demon's intelligence. Why didn't Uncle Liu go to investigate? If the rumors were true, such a genius had not been acquired by anyone else. If it could be used by Uncle Huang, wouldn't it be an additional boost to Uncle Huang's efforts to restore the Han dynasty? Later, Lu Xuanda rushed to the water town outside the city. Xuanda saw that although the courtyard was not large, it was quite elegant. The entrance was surrounded by a small stream, and the hibiscus trees were in full bloom. In the courtyard, a jujube leaf had turned yellow, but the branches were full of fruits. The jujubes were emerald red, like the big girls in the waiting room, making people couldn't help but want to taste them. Chapter 7. Great War Approaches. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Subsequently, there were famous stories such as Liu Bei's invitation to Zhuge Liang and Zhuge Liang's departure from the thatched cottage. However, no one knew until his death what the bamboo slips and wool rolls Zhuge Liang received were. If the rumors were correct, it would indicate that even Zhuge Liang had not fully learned the things in those bamboo slips, otherwise Zhuge Liang would not have divided the world. After Liu Chan succeeded to the throne, he learned about this matter and sent people to search extensively in an attempt to find out what Zhuge Liang once had. His former residence was almost dug 3 feet underground, but no one knew where those things had gone. Some people say that Zhuge Liang had no accompanying burial items after his death, only those bamboo slips and wool rolls that he carried into the tomb. Others say that Zhuge Liang hid these things in Liu Bei's tomb chamber after his death, but neither Liu Bei's tomb nor Zhuge Liang's tomb could be opened by Liu Chan. The former was the tomb of his father, and he would not violate the world's law to open it, while Zhuge Liang's tomb was not even known where he was. Jiang Shoudao continued, "It's a long way to go. Let's talk about this giant monster. There are legends about its origin in the world, and its Kunpeng. According to the book Zhuangzi's Journey to Xiaoyao, there is a fish in the northern underworld named Kuan. Kuan is so big that it transforms into a bird, and its name is Peng. The back of Peng is so big that it can travel thousands of miles. The monster mentioned is incredibly huge, although it may be exaggerated, it is indeed very large. In 225 AD, Zhuge Liang helped Liu Bei establish the kingdom of Shu not long ago, and the people's peaceful days had not yet passed. Fate used some unknown method to awaken Kunpeng, who had been sleeping in ancient times, in the depths of the North Sea abyss. Kunpeng woke up to find that ancient times had passed away, and great gods such as En Yuhua, Emperor Fuxi, and Shenong also disappeared. He intended to harm the world. As soon as he appeared, he opened his mouth and swallowed up half of the population of Jiangling City. Liu Bei was furious and invited Zhuge Liang to ask him, Jiangling City has been plagued by monsters, and people are living in water and fire. Can Liang find a way to save the people? Zhuge Liang smiled and said, Your Highness, there's no need to worry too much. When that evil beast appeared, I had some insights. I'll just go and collect it, but you need to send 10,000 soldiers to clear the way for me. Liu Bei immediately waved his hand and said, Let Li Jin take command and lead 20,000 elite soldiers to assist Liang in capturing and killing that evil beast. Later, Zhuge Liang wrote a letter of cultivation and ordered someone to secretly send it to Zhou Yu's mansion. The content of the letter was, My brother Yuqi, Liang is writing a letter today. I believe he has already realized that fate has returned to the world, and Kunpeng has been awakened by it, causing harm to the world. I believe he also knows that if fate comes to an end, blood will inevitably flow into rivers on the earth, bones will form mountains, and there will be great chaos in the world. Liang wants to remove demons before, but he is afraid of insufficient ability and invites him to go together. I have a compassionate heart for the world, and I will not see any harm to life. I hope you can help me. Zhuge Liang quickly received a reply from Zhou Yu, expressing his willingness to go together. In the late autumn of 225 AD, General Li Jin led 20,000 elite soldiers to guard outside Chang'an City, waiting quietly for Zhuge Liang. Quickly, Zhuge Liang's figure appeared at the city gate, riding a red mane and fierce horse, dressed in a white robe, and leisurely arrived. He arched his hand at Li Jin and said, General Li, please reorganize the army. We will set off immediately to subdue the demons. Upon hearing this, Li Jin called for a deputy general and immediately led a massive army of 20,000 people to Jiangling City. Along the way, he also met Zhou Yu who had arrived. There was no army beside Zhou Yu, but only a few people accompanying him. After seeing Zhou Yu, Li Jin roared with joy and said, I didn't expect any other joy. The fire camp followed me to capture Zhou Yu's dog thief. But Zhuge Liang stopped him one step ahead and said, General Li, Zhou Yu was invited by me to help subdue demons. Please don't delay any major matters, General. Li Jin snorted discontentedly, each of these soldiers under my command has experienced countless battles and emerged from the pile of dead. Which one did not survive from 1,000 armies and horses? In other words, it is a monster. Even if the enemy army comes, I can completely annihilate them. You strategists like to make a big deal out of a small matter. Sending you here is a wrong decision, and we cannot kill any monsters. Zhuge Liang shook his head slightly, sighing that he was really brave but not strategic, and then turned his horse's head to approach Zhou Yu. Thank you very much for your righteousness, brother. I am willing to lend a helping hand. Zhou Yu said, You're welcome. Liang must be curious why I only brought a few people here, but don't underestimate them. These are all first-class magic masters I have found from the people, each with the ability to subdue dragons in the sea and capture demons in the mountains. Zhuge Liang bowed to them one by one and said, Thank you all for your understanding of righteousness. Going to battle here is extremely dangerous. I hope you can sacrifice your life for justice. If this demon is removed, the world will be peaceful. Liang also guarantees to you that your wife and children will be prosperous for generations. These people all showed a happy expression on their faces. You should know that in this newly settled chaotic era, it is already very good to be able to find a job. Many people have not had enough to eat, but today the famous scholar Zhuge Liang made a promise to ensure the wealth and prosperity of their family for generations, making them feel that even if they must die, it is okay. Then Zhuge Liang and Zhou Yu led the way in front of them, followed by a massive army behind them. After a sleepless day and night, they finally arrived outside Jiangling city. However, they saw the city gate tightly locked, the smoke and flames outside the city non-stop, and many corpses lying by the roadside, forming a sharp contrast to the past prosperity. Zhuge Liang sighed slightly and said, "I don't know how many survivors there are in the city. General Li, please order someone to break open the city gate." Li Jin nodded and had someone push the siege vehicle over, hitting the city gate more than 10 times before pushing it open. This Li Jin led the way to the city, but even though he had experienced countless battles and was accustomed to life and death, he couldn't help but clench his fist and his forehead was bulging with veins. Then he looked up and shouted, "Demon, I want to kill you." Zhuge Liang, Zhou Yu, and others followed closely into the city. After they saw the desolation inside the city, they couldn't suppress their anger. Chapter 8. Blood Battle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I saw corpses piled up higher than houses in the city, with blood flowing into grooves. The crow gnawed on the pile of corpses, and the wild dog with red eyes barked wildly at the crowd. How can its tragic situation be fully documented? Zhuge Liang's eyes were almost cracked as he looked up and sighed, "If you don't kill this wicked beast, Zhuge Liang will cut himself off from the city and swear not to be a human." Zhou Yu and the 5 people on the side were also extremely angry. Zhou Yu spoke up and said, "There may not be any remaining population of 730,000 in Jiangling city. Sigh. General Li, thank you very much for the soldiers under your command. Take these corpses out of the city and burn them. If so many corpses are not dealt with in time, there may be a major epidemic." Li Jin, whose eyes were filled with tears, and he loudly ordered the soldiers to dig a huge pit outside the city. Then, he used a wooden cart to pull the body into the pit and start burning it. It took 3 days and 3 nights to finally clean up the corpses of the people in Jiangling city. Zhuge Liang instructed Li Jin to order the soldiers under his command to rest well for a night and set off to eliminate the demons tomorrow. The next morning, Zhuge Liang stood early on the city wall, looking at the soldiers stationed below, unsure of what he was thinking. Zhou Yu stepped forward and stood beside him, saying, "Kongming, the sky is bright and the mind is heavy. What is the reason for this?" Zhuge Liang shook his head and sighed, "That giant beast is not very easy to deal with. This battle is no easier than a big battle." Kongming was equipped with a shocking strategy and concealed a powerful Taoist technique. How could he be afraid of a small bird and gain others' ambition before embarking on a mission? This is not Kongming's style. What I am afraid of is not the ping bird, but fate. It is only after contact with it that I truly understand its terror. No wonder its shadow has been behind the downfall of all dynasties, said Zhuge Liang. Do you mean fate? Zhou Yu's face showed solemnity, then he sighed and said, "Indeed, if faced with it, it is truly unsettling." Later, Zhuge Liang shook his head and walked into a huge tent. Li Jin was setting up a formation with the deputy general, and Zhuge Liang arched his hand and said, "General Li, today is the double ninth festival on September 9th, which is the time of the year when the yang energy is at its peak. Let's set off immediately and go kill that evil beast." Li Jin nodded and then walked out of the camp, ordering to leave. Finally, he found the Kongming on a cliff 20 miles away from Jiangling city, which was digesting the blood of hundreds of thousands of people. At that time, it was sleeping. Zhuge Liang thought it was the best time to kill it, so he began to deploy troops and transform 20,000 elite soldiers into a large formation in a strange way, hoping to trap it. As a result, fate suddenly appeared, awakening the sleeping Kunpeng. Its roar was deafening, and it opened its mouth to devour hundreds of soldiers. Zhuge Liang was shocked and didn't expect fate to suddenly disrupt the situation. However, at that time, there was no way for him to reconsider his strategy, and he could only let the soldiers hunt around, while he and Zhou Yu led the several alchemists to attack. This battle truly made people feel the terror of Zhuge Liang. Although there were 20,000 elite soldiers and a few strong men to assist, the main battle was between Zhuge Liang and the Kunpeng. That battle was not just terrifying, it was simply earth-shattering. Let the Wei, Shu, and Wu kingdoms, who are hundreds of miles away, see the terrifying and murderous aura here. In this battle, Zhuge Liang applied the 5 elements and 8 trigrams to the extreme. A huge map of the Great Tao blocked the sky and sun, like a projection of the end of the world, but it only managed to block Kunpeng. In the end, there was nothing he could do. Zhou Yu borrowed the power of the 5 elements and 8 trigrams to borrow the power of qi and attached himself to Zhuge Liang. Only then did they seal the giant beast on the cliff. After the end of the war, the 3 kingdoms borrowed troops to investigate the situation. After the war, they saw remnants and corpses scattered everywhere, with blood and flesh blurred everywhere. Finally, people dug up Zhuge and Zhou Yu, who were seriously injured and dying, in the pile of corpses. It was precisely because of this war that Zhuge Liang fell ill. As for the great General Li Jin and 20,000 soldiers, they all died and were completely destroyed, which is why in history, the great General Li Jin ultimately went missing. In fact, he died in that battle at that time. Jiang Laodao stopped abruptly when he said this. Seeing Jiang Yishu listening with great interest, he couldn't help but get angry and gave him a kick. Jiang Yishu was still addicted to stories, and a sudden kick pulled him back into reality. He touched his buttocks and said, "Dad, your story is really wonderful. When I was in college, I was also a fan of novels, and I have read countless books. I have never seen such a wonderful story like yours." But the old Taoist gave a strange smile and said, "Stories are often more exciting than real events. Don't wander around, stinky boy. Follow me well. In this cave, there is the Chimen Duanjia set up by Mr. Zhuge back then. Even if you make a mistake, the great Luo immortal cannot save you." "No, I didn't see any danger." Before Jiang Yishu finished speaking, he felt like he was stepping on nothing. Suddenly, a bottomless black hole appeared at his feet, which scared him to the point where his face turned white. He shouted urgently, "Dad, help me quickly." As a result, he looked up and found that the old Taoist had already disappeared. He thought his life was over, but he heard a loud shout and a pleasant bell ringing in his ear. Jiang Yishu suddenly opened his eyes and found himself standing in the same spot. Next to him, Jiang Laodao held a strangely shaped bell in his hand, which was exactly the sound of the bell in his hand. Jiang Yishu asked curiously, "Dad, didn't I fall into the abyss?" "Why?" "Humph," Jiang Laodao snorted coldly and said, "This is the strangeness of Chimen Duanjia. The formation here is mixed with illusion, making you think you have dealt with things. If you can't leave this illusion formation, you will really die in illusion. It almost took me inside here, it's really terrifying. Fortunately, I still have this magical tool in my hand. If it weren't for this, I would have almost been trapped and died here." After the old Taoist finished speaking, the book's gaze turned to the bell in his hand. The bell looked like it was cast in bronze, with a greenish hue and a charming magic. Chapter 9. Dialogue. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There are 2 ears on the side, as if it is convenient for people to carry, carved with birds, animals, fish, and insects, but one piece is missing, affecting the overall aesthetics. Jiang Yishu was also quite fond of studying ancient artifacts, and he can see at a glance that this bronze bell has a history of at least thousands of years. Jiang Laodao saw what he wanted to ask and spoke up first. This bronze bell is something that has been forged for over 2,000 years since the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States period. It was made by the famous expert O Yezi and is one of his few strange objects, infused with a lot of his efforts. Later, it was used by the military saint Sun Wu to offer sacrifices to heaven and earth, and obtained the power of heaven, earth, and spirits. It can break through the underworld and open up illusions. Later, it was also blessed by generations of famous masters in history, and it has an unpredictable power to this day. Unfortunately, I cannot exert the power of this object in my hands. I can only use it to break through formations and suppress some weak evil objects, which is truly a waste. Tianwu, good thing, if Dad takes this thing out for auction, those wealthy businessmen will definitely break their heads and compete for it. I will sell you first if you dare to think of it. This is one of my few treasures. The Qingqing mountain leader refused to exchange many rare treasures for it. Oh. So, do you still have many such collections? Why don't you sell one or two of them? I remember when I was a child, my family was very poor, and I seriously suspect that you used the money to collect these things back then. Blusha's face turned red, and he scolded with righteous words. Nonsense, these things are almost national treasures. How can you show them to others at will? If there are people who have a heart and your father can't keep it, if they are sent abroad, wouldn't you be ashamed to face your ancestors? Speaking of which, weren't you the owner of some company before? Why didn't you bid back our overseas antiques? What's the use of you? It's a waste of money. Jiang Yishu shrugged helplessly and said, Dad, do you know the value of those things? They can easily exceed 100 million yuan, and even if you add up all your son's wealth, you can't get one or two back. Besides, your son has donated all his business, which is worth tens of millions. How many people have the courage to do this? Jiang Laodao snorted and said, money is just an external thing. More money only makes you better materially, and less money makes you starve. Compared to those who sacrifice themselves for others, what are you? But on the other hand, how much of the money you donate can go to those who truly need it? When it comes to these two fathers and sons, they both fell silent. Jiang Laodao lived for decades and had seen and experienced many of them. However, Jiang Yishu has been in the business world for more than 10 years, how can he not know the depth of the world? As they spoke, the two of them walked to the end of the cave, only to see a bronze door at the end. There were countless patterns on the bronze door, carved with the gods of the human-headed snake god, ancient sacrificial scenes, and the origin of the Kunpeng. At this moment, the young man in a white suit was standing in front of the door. When he saw the father and son of the Jiang family arrive, a faint smile appeared on his lips and he said, Mr. Jiang, after more than 30 years of parting, time flies like a shuttle. You have transformed from your heroic appearance back then to an elderly man. I wonder how many more years you can live and how long you can stop me. There aren't many people left who stopped me with you back then, right? Hee hee. I won't bother you anymore. By living an extra year, I can make you unhappy for a year. Before I die, I will cultivate a descendant and continue to prevent you from interfering in the mortal world. Don't worry. As soon as these words were spoken, the young man in a white suit clearly felt as if he had been stimulated. He spoke in a cold voice, Old man, I advise you not to have such thoughts. You should be clear about the outcome of being involved in cause and effect with me. Jiang Laodao said, Cause and effect. You are just a part of his manifestation and can use some of his power. You cannot even directly intervene in human affairs, and you deserve to mention cause and effect. Really? I can't directly intervene in human affairs, but don't forget, I'm always above the crowd. Although I don't have the ability to rewrite rules, I can indirectly influence their thoughts. Time is running out, and your daughter Law at the foot of the mountain should already be in big trouble. She doesn't seem like an ordinary person either. I see the blood of those people flowing through her body, and your newborn grandson has fully inherited that bloodline. I have already found a prestigious family in your mortal world to help you raise him." Jiang Yishu, who had been by his side all along, was shocked when he heard these words and asked, "What are you talking about? What have you done to Xaner? If she has something to do, I will definitely not let you go." "Oh, I forgot about you, little bastard. You were born back then, but it was entirely because your father exchanged his life for his own, and your mother's life for your survival." Upon hearing this, Jiang Yishu was struck by lightning. No wonder he had never had a mother since childhood. His father had always told him that his mother had passed away due to difficult childbirth, but he did not expect such a hidden situation. He unconsciously looked at Jiang Laodao. But the old Taoist priest ignored him and said to the man in suit, "Even if you come here, there is no second way to open the seal except to use Mr. Zhuge's essence and blood and his token. Zhuge's order to remove demons is now sealed in the 9th layer of the Demon Suppression Tower on Qingqing Mountain, and it is not easy for you to enter there. How can you open the door?" The man in the suit sneered and said, "Don't forget who I am. If you can't do this, wouldn't you be ashamed of it? And your son has Zhuge Liang's blood, isn't he? He is the life of the Purple Way Emperor, and his blood is Zhuge Liang's blood." After speaking, he turned around and shouted at the bronze gate, "Kuanpeng, do you still want to reproduce the world? Now it's your turn to contribute." But his words fell behind, but nothing happened, and Jiang Laodao laughed heartily at the sight. "I forgot to tell you, besides being able to seal demons, the Zhuge demon sealing formation can also gradually erase what has been sealed. After being disabled by us back then, it was sealed for decades. Perhaps it has long been erased in the river of time. Impossible, it is a monster that has escaped from the depths of the abyss. How could human power erase it?" Chapter 10. The Powerful Mysterious Man. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Suddenly, a suffocating sense of oppression emanated from behind the bronze gate, causing a sense of brutality, slaughter, and despair. A deep voice sounded like an honest middle-aged man. "Many years later, who will awaken me? Without the power of heaven and earth, how can I be suppressed? In vain will this seat be destroyed, it should be killed." After the sound fell, a huge sense of oppression came, as if heaven and earth were exerting pressure on this place. Jiang Laodao immediately sprayed a mouthful of blood, and Jiang Yishu had already been pressed to the ground. Fortunately, the bronze belt emitted a burst of blue light, which offset most of the pressure. The man in a white suit laughed heartily and said, "I knew you wouldn't disappoint me. Which monster is the ordinary one who crawled out of the abyss? Come on, try to break the seal and join me in breaking this world apart." Jiang Laodao hurriedly said to the man in the suit, "What benefits does this have for you? I remember you are a theater goer, and you cannot interfere in human affairs." Upon hearing this, the man in the suit smiled faintly and said, "That's right, I'm just a spectator, but a drama that only develops in an orderly manner is too boring. Making the world chaotic is what I want to see." At this moment, there was a sudden violent vibration from the bronze door, as if it would shatter in the next second, and a sound came from behind the door. "It's time to move your muscles and bones." At this moment, on the back mountain of Longhu Mountain, thousands of miles away, in a dilapidated thatched cottage, an old man sitting on a grass mat suddenly opened his eyes. Heaven and earth had changed, and Kunpeng was about to be born again. The old man shouted loudly, "Send me orders, guard the mountain gate, set up a large formation to protect the mountain, gather all disciples, and contact the disciples who have been sent to eliminate demons to return to the mountain." In Maoshan, Qingqing Mountain and other sects are also sending out similar orders, even in some secret places where outsiders are not allowed or have never set foot. At this moment, the man in a suit stood in front of the bronze door, with a triumphant smile on his lips, while the faces of the father and son of the Jiang family in front of him were as ugly as if they had eaten a dead fly. The suffocating sense of oppression grew stronger and stronger, and the bronze door seemed to break open at any time. However, it suddenly changed and a black talisman flew in at an extremely fast speed and hit the bronze door. In an instant, the sense of oppression seemed to disappear, and the door stopped trembling. The sudden change stunned all three present. The man in the suit first reacted and saw his forehead veins bulging. He shouted, "Who's causing me trouble?" But Jiang Lao Dao looked around, "Where can the experts help? Please come out and see me." Surprisingly, there was an extra person in the twilight of the field. This person was sitting cross-legged in the void, dressed in a white robe that was not stained with dust, emitting white light all over his body. He was surrounded by lightning, and even his hair was silver white, but his face could not be seen clearly. In a hazy moment, he could also see the outline, as if walking in a dream. As soon as this person first appeared, he spoke to the bronze gate and said, "Kuanpeng, today is not yet the time when you were born. There will be a day when you return to the abyss, but it is not today. Let's hone your character in it and redeem the sins you did in the past." Kuanpeng inside the gate heard this sound and responded with a choked voice, Is that you? Are you still alive? Take me out. If I could be by your side, whether it's keeping me forever in the abyss or fighting alongside you, I would be willing." The mysterious person spoke up, "I was indeed going to die back then, but the abyss was really a place where death came with me. I dug up the great medicine left by those ancient people deep and managed to survive the fatal injury. When I heard the news of your death, I once mourned and rushed into a mysterious passage, hoping to retrieve your body and seek revenge for you. However, as soon as I entered, a sword light from the sky struck me, seriously injuring me. I had no choice but to retreat. That was when the chess pieces of it appeared, tempting me to go to the world of calamity. Coincidentally, I needed a large amount of essence and blood to heal my wounds, so I agreed." Kuanpeng said. "As a result, I encountered a character with extremely strong Taoist skills outside, who seriously injured me again and then sealed me." The mysterious person said, "I already knew about your situation. I didn't save you, but I wanted you to redeem yourself. One day, when a destined person appears, they will rescue you. Rest assured and practiced secretly inside." The man in the suit was furious when he heard their conversation and shouted at the mysterious person, "Count the heavens and earth, count all the fate. Who are you? Why can't I count anything about you, even the cause and effect line about you? I can't see it clearly." Suddenly, the man in the suit seemed to have figured it out and murmured to himself, "I know now, you don't belong to this world. You are a strong person who crossed the space channel and crossed the boundary. No wonder I never knew everything about you. I can't be unaware of a strong person like you." Then he burst out laughing and said, "Why do you dare to act against the heavens? Aren't you afraid that the rules of the big world will suppress you and make you explode and die?" As he spoke, the man in the suit suddenly made a move and a thin sword appeared in his hand, chopping towards the mysterious person. The others did not respond, but Kuanpeng inside the gate became anxious and shouted, "Stop, stop, don't hit him." But the mysterious man remained still in place, and a light shield appeared next to him, blocking the suit man's attack and bouncing him out. He fell to the ground and spat out blood. He said incredulously, "It's impossible. How could you be so strong that heaven and earth are cut off? It's impossible for someone like you to be right."